Hello, I'm Hejin Kim from Sculpture Department. When I first saw Tom LaDuke's work, it was painting, but for me, I could see three-dimensional infinite sculpture space. There was no gravity. I was impressed by his works. Today, it's my honor to introduce Tom LaDuke at Cranbrook. Tom LaDuke is a painter and sculptor whose work explores themes of nature, science fiction, and memory, and utilize a wide range of image depiction and surface techniques. Tom LaDuke was born in Holyoke, Massachusetts. He grew up in Los Angeles, California, where he continues to live and work today. In 1991, he earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts from California State University in Fullerton. 3 years later, in 1994, he completed his Master of Fine Arts at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in Illinois. His recent solo exhibitions include Miles McHenry Gallery in New York, which is upcoming show in November 15. CRG Gallery in New York, Candles and Lasers Con Gallery in Los Angeles, and Run Generator, Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in Philadelphia. And recent group exhibitions include Belief in Giants, Miles McHenry Gallery, Loose Cannon, LA Louvre in Venice, an inaugural exhibition, CRG Gallery in New York, New Art for a New Century, Contemporary Acquisitions, Orange County Museum of Art in Newport Beach. FYI, The Reflected Gaze, Self-Portraiture Today, Trans Art Museum in Torrance, Tools William Gallery, Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, Lifelike, Painting in the Third Dimension, Sweeney Art Gallery, University of California in Riverside, New Works, a group show of gallery artists, Angles Gallery in Santa Monica, and Scene, recent acquisitions from the Lockman Fine Art Complex Permanent Collection, Cal State Los Angeles in Los Angeles. His work is included in the permanent collection of Albright Knox Art Gallery in Buffalo, the Alphond Collection of Contemporary Art at Rollins College, Cornell Fine Art Museum in Winter Park, Solomon Art Guggenheim Museum in New York, Jumex Collection in Mexico City, Lockman Gallery in Los Angeles, Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego in San Diego, Norman Museum of Contemporary Art in Overland Park, Orange County Museum of Art in Newport Beach, Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia, Pizzuri Collection in Columbus, Portland Art Museum in Portland, and the Speed Art Museum in Louisville. Please welcome Tom LaDuke.
Thanks, everybody. I'm in a lot of collections. Seems like it just goes on. Okay, where to start? I got a lot of images to show, so I'm gonna really blow through a bunch of them, but then there's a bunch of stories to tell. So I'll try to make it interesting, I guess. I'll start with this one. My ex-wife took this photograph after I'd been trying to figure out what to do. It's maybe you've had this experience, not knowing what to do. It's so frustrating. I should say too that a friend of mine knows that I'm pretty nervous with these kind of presentations, so he said, "Show your most embarrassing image." And first, my wife reminds me that this is not nearly the most embarrassing image that I have. So, okay. So this is called Enrique Fermi, and it's 15 feet tall, and it's pencil lead that have been glued together with super glue. It really shouldn't stand up. Well, I think there's a detail of it. This is the top 2 feet of it. So, mechanical pencil lead. It's not like a beautiful material, but it's really rigid and a little bit difficult to work with, difficult to glue together, that's for sure. Right here, nobody ever knows this, but this is like a little wind sock thing. If you blow on it, it spins. I mean, it's up 14 feet, so or 12 and a half feet, so no one's ever going to know that, but now you know that. And the person that purchased it, like, he built a separate, like, room in his home and really took care of it and stuff. But every time there was, like, a windstorm or, like, a tremor, I thought, oh, shit, I'm going to get a phone call. It's going to come down. But it didn't. It's stuck in there. This is called Bodies of My Enemies. It's 365 me. Obviously one for every day of the year. Like, this one is like public speaking and, you know, so like that. So, and there's a whole bunch of the funny part, well, I have some interesting collectors. I mean, someone who would collect this. It's he's a Jewish guy, Jewish lawyer for Hollywood. He puts the music with movies, and he freaks everybody out because he's got this in his office, and it really looks like the Holocaust and stuff like that. And he's got a weird sense of humor. So I like him a lot. So I was doing these paintings for a while, I guess. I guess every image that you see, there's like, maybe there's 10 pieces that are like kind of along that line. You know, when you make a lot of stuff, the body of work comes as you're making it. It doesn't work the other way around. Yes. Oh, the last sculpture? That was 2001. Yeah. It was the first year I was picked up into like a gallery. And it was not a restaurant or anything like that. It was like an actual thing, and so I thought I'd make that piece. This one, these are all around like between 2002 and 2007, and it's about the size that you see it here, and it's on aluminum, 3/8 aluminum, so it's quite heavy. I was making these paintings. They're paintings. They're painted with camouflage paint that you get in a hobby store. I love hobby stores. If you go to one, you'll see that there's some pretty nerdy people that work there. So if you mention the word glue, they'll talk to you for like an hour about different adhesives and stuff. It's really cool. It's like artists should be that obsessed, I think, about it. So this is called Dimmer, and it's a retirement home. Well, we're looking through a window across the freeway, and you can see up here is the reflection of a chandelier. Oops. Oh, backwards. Like that's kind of behind me. So when I was doing these paintings, it's like the sky in California, in Los Angeles, those of you who've been here might know, certain days in the summer, the heat and the smog kind of commingle, and it can make things disappear, like galvanized poles become the same color and texture and weight as the sky. And so I was really interested in that. That very first image was all about that. There's too many stories to tell, but so anyway, I didn't want to just, to me, like all material is content. Like regular paint wouldn't have done this. It had to be this camouflage paint that they use. It's really cool. They've matched exactly the color that, let's say they paint an aircraft, but in miniature, so you got to change it enough so it looks real. I liked all that stuff at the time. Here's another one. This is the inside of Target shopping store. Do they have Targets here? Has an amazing ceiling with all these light panels on there. But it was after Christmas sale. There's a little plastic tree here, and one of those owls that keep away birds or whatever. It's a detail. That's like the size of a dime. This one, it's called Accidental Gunshot. And so this one's about my brother, Jerry. He was a bartender. This story took place like in 1980, and so he had a little problem drinking and doing other things. So he came home one night, and this is his apartment building, and he lived in this one here. Here's his Christmas lights. He came home one night, and he was drunk and high, so he's also like prone to being paranoid, and he also likes guns, and so he had this .22 pistol, and he took all of his clothes off for some reason, summer, and he strapped on the gun belt, and he could see his reflection in the sliding glass window that faced the courtyard to this complex, and he's doing that taxi driver thing, like, and he had forgotten that he had loaded the gun. that week, and the gun went off, and it made a hole in the sliding glass window up in the right-hand corner. Didn't shatter the glass, but made a hole through it. But 2 o'clock in the morning, that's a big sound. And a couple of seconds later, this helicopter parked itself above the complex, and he thought for sure that he'd killed somebody. So he sat down on the couch and put his pants back on, put the gun down, just waited for the police to come. It turns out it was an unrelated incident, that this helicopter had just been sort of like doing something else and happened to be parked above the complex there. It's not even that interesting of a painting. The reason I show it is because he doesn't know that I painted the painting or that I tell this story. There he is. This one, the Guggenheim bought. The Guggenheim bought this one. I can't say anything that's better than that about this painting. So what I was doing at the time, so then I had this kind of, I did a lot of those, and then I didn't know what to do again. So I was in my studio messing around, and I happened to notice that light was coming across the television set that I had kind of going there all day long, so that I couldn't see the image on the screen. I could just see the reflection that the light through my skylight was making across it, and I realized I was moving myself to cancel out the non-information to see what the information is, and I started thinking, which one is which? And that's a very simple little thing, but it's kind of profound for me at the moment because it gave me something to start working on. So these next few pieces are kind of based on this very simple idea where you can look at this cube and you can put one of the planes in front, and then you can shift it so that it's away from you. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? You feel it in your mind. You can like make it move back and forth. I think it's kind of interesting. But you can't see both at the same time with equal intensity. So I started making these paintings, starting with a film still. This is from Miller's Crossing. There's this scene in it where they're looking up into this canopy of trees before they execute somebody. It's interesting. There's no sound at that point that we talked about yesterday, but you can hear the trees creaking, and the reflection is my studio space. So it's like just like basically a very straight shot of what was projected and what was reflected on this single plane. Blue Velvet and some stuff in my studio. You should see Blue Velvet if you haven't. It's a good movie. Lost in Translation. So I was doing these kind of things. These seem ultra boring to me now, but I was really into them at the time. Working on sculpture at the same time. Every show I've had, it's been sort of half and half, half sculpture, half painting, it was difficult to get a gallery for a long time because of that too. But I never had a problem with it. Like I like to look, like if I go to see a show and it looks like a group show, but it turns out to be one person, I think that's awesome. It's a badass show. You don't see it very often, I think, a little bit more now than before. But this is called Hours of Operation, and it's, I cast it like every square inch of my body and put it in this sort of scale model of a tilt-up, which is like a industrial complex where you can rent storage for hiding your shit or storing your stuff, whatever it is. So there's my dick. Anyway, so all the rooftops were made up of part of me and stuff. This is Elder, and this is also graphite. It's 5'9" inches. It's about my dad. I watched my dad die. It sounds terrible. It was transformative, to say the least. It was a pretty profound moment. It was pretty good, though. I mean, he was dying. It was bad, but it was amazing too. So we had a certain closeness, and so it took me about a year to figure out how to make a sculpture of what he saw when he was dying, which sounds strange, but I could sort of see what he was seeing when he died, and it turned out to be this thing. This broke after somebody bought it, it got shipped to New York, and some movers were moving it, and it was in a vitrine, and someone just bumped the wall, and it just shattered into a million pieces. Usually I can fix my stuff, which was my other job, is fixing my own stuff, but especially the sculptures are very delicate. So here's some more painting. Okay, so it's sort of based on the same as those other paintings, but with this sort of impasto passage that's painted over the top of everything. It's really fun to spend a month or so on what is now the background, making it sort of as accurate as possible, like cold, like they're in acrylic, and it's like I didn't want them to be. I didn't want my hand in it, but I wanted it quite believable. And then the imagery that I was using would always sort of ring a bell, and I would think of like some classical painting that I was really in love with. In this case, it was this Bruegel painting. Because when I look at this, maybe I've got an image of it. Oh, this is something you probably shouldn't do. I got the idea by looking at that Bruegel painting, I could sort of smell the fire that's burning in it, depicted in the picture. And I thought, I got to set a fire. And so the material I used to paint the first layer, I lit on fire. This is like in the first couple of seconds. I was pretty excited, but the flames were like to the top of the screen, and like a second later, it was pretty freaky. And everything's flammable in there and stuff, but nobody got hurt, so it worked out for the painting. I realize I've got a bunch of paintings here, but I do have sculpture. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. So we can just like skip a few of these things. So there's painters out there? I hate you. Just kidding. It's totally joking. I'm not sure how much. There's so much to say about all these things, but this is from an Ozu film. Good Japanese guy. This one is called. This had a working title of My First Girlfriend Was a Snowman. And the reason why is the image is from a movie called Let the Right One In, which is like this Swedish vampire movie. It's a pretty good movie. And the kid is frustrated at school, so he's stabbing this tree to get his frustration out. And I thought, Jesus, I used to do that when I was a kid for sure, because I get picked on at school or whatever, and so I go home and I destroy something, and it would make me feel better. But when I was destroying it, I would hear my mother's voice. So there's certain things you do that you don't want your mother part of or something. So so that was kind of awkward. I should step back. So she would spank me. I was very close to my mom. I love my mom. She was a great person, but she would spank me. And at one point, it's quite a bold little brat. She would call me, and I would wipe off the spank like it didn't mean anything to me. And she saw me do that, and she laughed. And as soon as she saw me laugh, that game was over. It's like, that's not going to work anymore. Spanking. So she changed to psychological torture to get me to obey. And I remember very clearly she got on the phone one day and pretended that she was on the line with the Home for Unwanted Children. And she said, no, he's here. I can hold. A few minutes would go by, and I'm like starting to get worried. No, I'll have his bags packed. You can pick him up at 2 o'clock. And she was like so straight-faced, and I thought, well, that's it. So I really started to obey after that. She's a smart woman. This is a complex painting, but it started off with a film reference from Clockwork Orange, and toward the beginning of that film, there's a scene where this woman is potentially going to be gang raped on a stage. It's horrifying. What's interesting is that they're obviously actors, and it's very well choreographed. Like the lighting never. She's never blocked. As she's stripping off they're stripping her clothes off, and there's a struggle. But what's interesting is, and some of you are going to hate me for this, but the best part is when she actually gets tired because they're really being physical with her and stuff. She actually gets tired. She's not acting like she's tired. So it's like that moment in the film where that gets translated, it describes the entire film. Like in one frame, it's pretty good. He's pretty smart that way. He makes you sort of guilty for watching, and but by the time you sort of think that, it's already too late. You've already seen this scene. But all the distancing mechanisms he's put in place, where you're looking at a video of a space that's being filmed, of a stage that's in a theater, and it just keeps going back and back and back. It's really, really pretty good. So, yeah, so that's the first, this is a painting. That's the first layer of that painting. This is the only way I know how to do some of this stuff, the things I'm interested in. Like, they're hard to talk about, but they're really hard to make a picture of, too, because you don't want to illustrate it. This would be bullshit. You want the thing that you're interested to happen and not be prescribed or something. And so, anyway, so, seeing that, those people remind me very much of something I saw when I lived in New Hampshire when I was a kid, is these deer hunters coming out of the forest, and they just killed this deer, and they were kind of drunk and dancing around and like throwing the carcass on the hood of their car and stuff. And I was watching from behind a tree because we lived pretty deep in the woods, and it was weird. I felt so guilty for that deer. I had nothing to do with it, but anyway, so it reminded me of like watching that Kubrick film. And so I built this deer and put it on this glass because I want it, and the eyes are made out of glass. So when I shot this image to use for the painting, it's the reflection in the water in his eyes. So it's like he's seeing himself seeing, and that deer in the headlights thing is the most interior and yet distance that you can attain, I think. So this painting is all about different layers and levels of seeing and perceiving the world. So here there's those layers combined, and then that made me think of this amazing Rembrandt painting. I'm not even a big Rembrandt fan. Sometimes the hands and heads are the wrong size. I don't know, it's weird. Nobody ever busts him on that, but it seems kind of messed up. But this one's pretty good because this is the first time that the patron is not staring back at us. He's enraptured by his own knowledge of so he's demonstrating here what's going to happen when he pulls on this ligament to this hand, and sort of in a domino effect, these other scientists are like, "Oh shit, he's right." It's pretty good. So it's like this little montage that's happening in a still image. So that's how it ended up. And it turned out, as a fun sort of aside, that this hand thing was 1-to-1 scale with my own hand, so I could get all this on there, which is a really fun thing to do. Oh, I was going to say earlier, it takes a long time to set up these sort of what become background images, like to get them, and then sort of destroying them in seconds with the impasto paintos. It's a really fun thing to do. I think that's kind of a boy thing to do, but I'm a boy. So I was making these things too. These are all like parts made from memory of things, and based in painting. So I was thinking about this painting, but without looking at reference, trying to build something like like this guy here, and so there's a shot in the studio with it. So I'm not a butcher or a doctor or something like that, so I don't really know what it really looks like, but I think I do. It's funny, if you trust your mind, it kind of it can remember lots of detail about different things. It goes in tight, and I must admit, I'm showing off here by putting this barcode. This is all clay, by the way. I forgot to mention, the kind that doesn't harden. It's just kids' clay, but it comes in 4 or 5 different colors, and so you can kind of get it done. So I figured out a way to make the skin translucent on there. It was fun. This one is called The Substitute Teacher, and it's also it's a sparrow that I made up for out of that same material. The only thing that this is added on is the claws are my fingernails, and so this is where painting and sculpture kind of gets crossed. It's pretty nice because in a real bird, the feathers are they're sort of multicolored. It's like from the tip down to where it goes into the bird. And if you made a sculpture of this and then try to paint it on top, it's always going to look like a sculpture with something painted on top. And in this case, you could mix the clay and then move it around so it duplicated the feathers like sort of amazingly without much effort. Anyway, it's a nice material. If you haven't used it, I highly recommend it. The problem with it is the public, because it was on display and it got touched every day. So I had to fix it every day, and that gets to be dreary. But this next image is about that. So can someone read aloud? Anybody feel like reading aloud? Because I hate to read aloud.
I need to protest in the strongest possible manner what happened at your gallery this morning as follows. At approximately 11:30 a.m., I walked in the gallery with a friend. We immediately found the atmosphere a bit depressing, but started to walk to the exhibit area. To the right of the first room, there was what appeared to be a dead bird on its hand. I touched it lightly to see whether the bird was actually dead.
Weird.
All the time wondering what possibly could cause your gallery to exhibit such a strange thing. Immediately, both employees in the office, from a distance, they must have watched us, screamed at my friend and myself to immediately leave the gallery. Since we were not trying to abscond with the whole diamond, we were very surprised and shocked but left as we did not want to stay a minute longer in a place that did not want our business. We need an explanation and an apology from you and your employees. A gallery is a social and public place, and one hopes also a commercial place where the common courtesy should prevail. I am sending a copy of this letter, as you can see, to the Cultural Affairs Office of the City of Santa Monica. Thank you for your attention. Bye.
That makes you shake in your boots, doesn't it? They CC'd it to the Civic Center. I love it that he's so pissed off that he didn't take time to retype it. He's like, God damn it. And public. This is amazing. They were going to throw this away, and I caught it as it was headed toward the waste bin. I think it's just hilarious reading it. It's like so unconscious. Like it's amazing. But it's a clear depiction of like a lot of my work I've had to fix. Like one of the components that I want to put in is that you want to touch it, but hopefully you don't. Hold back. If someone spanked you as a kid, that's where that comes in. So the story that I wanted to tell about this thing too is I'll try to make it quick. So I was 13 years old, living in New Hampshire, and my brother, the one that I showed you earlier, he had a pump pellet gun, and it was a little bit messed up, so you had to pump it up like 70 times to make it lethal. And so I did, and my uncle said, he was in his 80s at the time, he said, "You're going to grow tired of shooting tin cans. I know you're going to want to shoot something, so if you see a red squirrel, you can shoot it because they're tearing my barn apart or whatever." So he was like very old school farmer type person. So I basically had a mission. So I went out into the woods and I was looking for a red squirrel, and I came across one. It was up in a tree, and I took aim and shot it, and it dropped, and I thought, now I'm a man. And until I approached the squirrel, and it wasn't dead. It was in pain. It was wriggling and writhing, and I thought, oh God, I've got to put this out of its misery. So I started pumping the gun again, tears and snot running off my face. That I realized this horrible thing that I had just done, and so you know how it is with your adrenaline, and I over pumped, and I got to only about 50, and I hope that's enough. So I shot again, but it didn't die. It got a little worse. It started to scream. I didn't know that squirrels could scream, but they made a little screaming sound. It's really the most awful thing ever. Dropped the gun, ran back to try to find my uncle. Nobody around. My brother's gone. So by the time I got back out there was only drag marks where some other animal had taken it. So maybe that's the story of this piece. Any questions about that? Usually people go, huh? What? This has another little video component in it. So along the same lines of creating a situation that you want to touch but shouldn't. So this piece the Orange County Museum bought, and they have a nice collection. This part is these are like these two land masses that I'd seen that looked so much like my body that I thought I would try to make them into the same thing. So you can't see it from this photograph. I got some other detailed ones. There's a power station here, not a power station, like a high tension tower here and over here, and then there's like basically invisible wires run between here, and they connect to the museum wall. And it's very nice of them to let me like have open flame in there and like to melt the plastic to make the thing to scale to what it should be and everything. I've set it up several times over there. There's a detail of the head size. I wanted to not forget, along the lines of like, I don't know how it is for you, but like when I get an idea, nothing's going to stop me from doing it. It's like, so I forget about safety or whatever, and so I cast my head using plaster of Paris. I didn't have any money, but I had a little plaster of Paris, and you know, you're not supposed to cast body parts. It's like if you cast your fingers, it can burn your finger off. I mean, it's really nasty stuff. But I thought, okay, as my head's bigger space, it's going to be fine. So I started putting it on my head, and I'm like giddy. I'm so excited about this, the thought of doing this piece, whatever. There's a giant block of curing plaster on my head, and then it started to get real hot, and I was like, shit, I better get this off of here. So I couldn't get it off, so I started hitting my head with this hammer, trying to break the thing off, and finally, and that wouldn't break it. I mean, it was really sturdy, and so I pulled it off, and I forgot that I didn't put any like release on my skin, and it pulled out. I don't have much hair, but like I do have like a lot of little hairs, and it pulled all of them out. I was like waxing my head, you know. But on the positive side, Rebecca, that all the hairs remained in the positive, and so when I painted it up, it was like grass on the side of this hill. It was awesome. It was so worth it. There's the other side of my hip, so it was kind of a weird piece. But it was all worth doing because of this. And I'm not really supposed to show this. I signed a paper saying I wouldn't show it. What I will do is I will not mention the institution that it belongs to. But I will say that this is a Charles Ray piece, and there's a Chris Burden right around the corner. I can't remember who that is, but that's a famous person. And my piece is down here. It's kind of in the corner. Because here's where the money is, you know. And then, anyway, so they're trying to keep track of what's what. And I think if I, let's see if I push play. I think this will do. Oh, no. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong one. Here we go. So it's a little kid here. And they just switched guards. These guys are just walking out on their break. And boom. He's smashing the tower on the left right now. Here comes the mom. And they never put their cell phones down, which is awesome. Keep checking in. And so that piece is destroyed now. It's in half. And then they realize, maybe we should go. Yeah. And then that's not the end of it, though. There's no guard in there yet. They haven't switched guards. And here he goes. Yeah, so determined. I love this kid. And then here comes the new guard, and he's like, what just happened? He doesn't want to deal with it at all, though. So, anyway, I think that's magnificent footage. I think that's the end of it. So it's almost worth it that I made the piece for that to happen, because I really like that footage. Oh yeah, and here it is afterwards. So, yeah. All right, so this piece, so I watched my mom die. Some time has gone past, and when she was dying, it was a long, horrible, awful death, and I was holding her hand. It took weeks and stuff. She basically starved to death because she could not swallow any longer and stuff. Terrible way to go. And I noticed the difference between us was that I have hair on my arm and she doesn't. So I thought maybe I should do something about that. I was also collecting her hair, which people think is just like the most awful thing to do, like I'm a serial killer or something like that. But anyway, I was brushing her hair, and it like gave her some relief, and so I was collecting that. And the first thing I tried was I thought, okay, so if it's the hair, what if I remove all the hair by plucking it out on this arm, and I like attach it, like plug it into this arm, the bottom part that doesn't have any hair, so it was like entirely hair all around. And it's like, maybe that's kind of a weird idea. By the way, it doesn't work if it gets infected. It's a horrible idea, so yeah, don't try that one. But then I thought that I would make this feather. And as soon as I thought that, I started seeing feathers all around. I mean, it's funny. As soon as you start paying attention to something, it kind of brings it into being. And I think that was the case. So I thought like this feather was a nice sort of goodbye and things. And so the, I don't know what anatomically you call this kind of part of the feather, but these are my arm hairs. And the centerpiece, the skeleton or whatever it would be, is her hair. And the funny thing is gray hair, once you hit it with super glue, this is super glue, it turns clear, like a piece of ice down the middle. It's really cool. And then these are my fingernails that are cut in little donut shapes that are hollowed so that light passes through them. So it took a long time to do that piece. There's a bunch of other stories about that too. But so more hair work. Petrus Christus. This is, I think, his best piece. I don't really like his work so much, but this one has something in it that's like something was going on between he and the model, I'm assuming, because he was really showed up for it. The other stuff looks like it's kind of bought or something. I don't know. But this one, it looks for real. So I have this maybe problem that I look at the thing you're not supposed to look at a lot or something. And so when I saw this piece in person, it's about 8 by 11. I saw the cracks, and so the cracks seem to be like way up on top for me, because it's old and it's different around the face than it is in the background. So I thought, how could I make those cracks that talk about this painting? And so the things that she doesn't have is eyebrows and eyelashes. So I thought that's a good thing to use, and so I basically built the portrait with my eyebrows and eyelashes. They get kind of more intense here in the center where her face is, and it's 1-to-1 scale. And then this floated in a plexi box so that you could see your reflection as you looked at her, and you could see through to where the artist would be, and then you can reverse it too. So it's a piece that worked out pretty nice, but here's a picture of me harvesting my eyelashes. This hurts. I mean, you pluck your eyebrows is no big deal, but the lashes. And then my wife at the time said, those don't grow back. And I was like, shit, because I didn't look too good with that. I mean, I look pretty good now, I know, but it's pretty bad with that. The thing. So here it is from the side. I mean, when I first did it, the cracks matched the painting like exactly, but like hair is still moving even after it's removed from your body, and so there's like little ambient movement inside there, like static electricity, whatever. So there's like this little waving flag of eyelashes and eyebrows. Oh, here's a horrible image of it's in there. It's really kind of hard to see, but yeah. Those are from my first show. It opened at 6 o'clock, and I showed up at 5:59 with this piece and dropped on the pedestal, which people were standing around thinking this is very minimal work. And so I dropped this gun there, and it freaked people out. It was 9/11 happened just before that, so people were kind of like on edge and stuff. But it's all art material, to me it's funny that it says the name of the drawing company and stuff on there. It's all graphite, I should say. I like this one too. Everyone has seen this a million times probably, but this to me is like me figuring out what to do. Right there, it's like so good. Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And so I really like that. I think that's smart. Oh, so that picture of me getting it was, so I was laying on the floor again, and I noticed that there was all these sort of imperfections in my studio floor. And I thought, okay, here's an idea. I will cast all those, and then I'll make a mold of all those and cast them in some material, and then reassemble them. and it'll be a sculpture of all the mistakes in my studio. I was like, that sounds pretty good. It was shitty. It didn't come out very well at all. I mean, but I did find out that like if you rub aluminum foil into like those little things and then hit it with super glue, the aluminum foil has a release agent on it, so you can lift it off and it makes this like plastic coat. And for this longest time, I've been wanting to make a plastic bag, a little black plastic bag, the kind that like used to be like carried by like hobos or something. I mean, it's like weird, like you have your booze or your pornography in it or something like that. I don't know why I relate to these bags so much, but like this, like, you know, they're just floating around the city. That's where my studio used to be, right behind us, lovely downtown LA. And so I wanted to make this piece, and I also wanted it to be like my tombstone somehow. But before I was putting that in there, I got excited that I knew how to make this bag, you know, from that material. And so it was a Sunday, and I took a drive down to get some coffee, and I happened to notice one of these bags down an aisle, like a dead-end street, an alleyway, and it was kind of bumping around in the breeze. And as I slowed down, it kind of like changed course and looked like it was headed toward the car. And I thought, that's interesting. It's great. I can like notice the gesture that I want to make in the sculpture and all that. And as it got closer, I opened the door and the bag came in. And I was like, oh shit, this is it. And it's one of those pieces that like everything kind of came together that way. It's like I was just in the way. So as fast as I could, I just kind of worked to get it to work out. So this looks like a plastic bag, but it's graphite and super glue, cast in that same way. So with aluminum foil, I built the bag and then cast on the inside surface of that. And this got a lot to do with all kinds of like cycles inside of cycles that you're unaware of. Like, what is that Marxist thing? It works best when they don't know what they're not unaware of what they're doing or something. So I think that's true. As soon as you sort of become aware of yourself, there's a distancing that happens that takes the life out of the piece. But anyway, so this has got different kinds of cycles in it. Beginning with this date, it's my birth and death date. So I know when I was born, and I know the day that I'm going to die. I just don't know the year. And the reason I know that is that it's kind of weird, but my family's not religious at all. But when my dad died, there was this family Bible that I knew about. I'd seen when I was a kid, but I hadn't seen for a long time, under my mom's bed. And it was huge. It was like a tome of a 20-pound book with a metal clasp on it and everything. It's kind of cool. But in the back of it, you're supposed to register the deceased name and keep a record and stuff. So my brother and I were doing that for my dad. And so he died on March 29th. And then we started seeing that date like a lot in there. Like his dad died March 29th. His uncle died March 29th. Just on and on, like sort of back for like 100 years. It's weird. So I figured, okay, so I know when that's going to happen. Somebody reminded me that I could get hit by a bus and be in a coma for a couple of years. It's fun stuff like that. But the date doesn't change. So I cast my wiener in there too. It's like another kind of reproduction. The best part of this is that also, like when my dad was dying, a couple of days later was my birthday. But also at that time, for all eternity, as far as I know, Pyxis is rising. Pyxis is a constellation, pops up over the horizon, southern horizon, so that we can see it forever at that time of year. And so I thought it'd be a nice thing to include. So what's happening here is there's a little mirror down the bottom of the bag. You couldn't see the mirror. You could just see the reflection of it. And so in the surface of the bag, which is kind of degraded, I was able to make the holes that was a real pain to line up. I had to do it in reverse so that when you saw it in the mirror, it was the right way. But the best part was that if you look down the mouth of the bag, it looked like this constellation took place about 10 feet beyond the object that you were looking at. And I couldn't have known that was going to happen until I did it. So it's one of those cool things. Even the recycling logo is in reverse, like these little eddies, I guess in time or something. some more painting stuff. So it's about the same time period. Same mode. This one, it's got to do with Blade Runner and the ambassadors, which is so much about the things I was talking about, where when you can see the skull, that anamorphic skull, that real famous painting, Hans Holbein. When you can see the skull, you can't see the painting, and when you can see the painting, you can't see the skull until you're leaving the gallery that it was designed to be painted in, and then they get close together. But I don't know. I think that's pretty fun stuff. Also, I often, here's this painting. I often don't know, and this is the scene from Blade Runner, although this is my wife now. So I'm totally serious about that too. She's very beautiful. And this scene, it's a really cool movie. And so I converted my studio into kind of a spaceship as what was going to be reflected inside the studio, inside the painting. And so each one of the monitors is one of these explosions. The thing I didn't know how to paint was one of the ambassadors' faces. I tried like so many times, I couldn't do it. And then one day I was, this guy here, one day I was eating a muffin, and I was like, shit, that's it. So, I love it when that works out like that. This is, gosh, I can't remember the name of this. It's got a good title on it too. But so this is salt and super glue. I wish I could think of the title. Anyway, and it's over a cast of my face. And so I have some like kind of workup shots for the sculptors in the room. And with a piece of lead and some heat, kind of shaped it over this cast of my face, and inverted it and released the stuff. Really beautiful. Super glue and salt, so good. It turns it back to the stone that it was, and so it's translucent. And it's really gorgeous. Looks like a little bit like marble, but it's different. And it's also elemental. I like materials that are like elemental, like that, because we have that in our tears and blood and semen and all that. So basically what this is you can see my face more in that. It's a little embarrassing. It's a little death, It's like you seeing me, seeing you, seeing me when I'm having an orgasm. It's embarrassing, but that's kind of what this piece is about. And then like bejeweled or something. This is all salt with these carvings and stuff on there. And this is the kind you make ice cream with. And yeah, so it was really fun to carve away at that stuff too. Another shot of it. This is a very simple piece. It survived a hurricane somehow, but it's just a box. But I built the spiderweb inside of it. I don't think you can see it in this next one. And somehow this, like in New York, they had that hurricane a few years back, and I had a bunch of work back there, and a bunch of it got destroyed. But this piece somehow survived. I don't know. It's a cured super glue, I should say, so it's really, really fine. And it actually catches bugs. There's a sculpture. This is half scale of me, and it's got to do. It's called Self-Inflicted Burden. It's got to do with the impact of Chris Burden's piece shoot that I saw many years after it was made, but it really disturbed me so much, and it never kind of left my mind. I thought, God, how could I ever live up to something that changed the world so much, in the art world? And I don't know how to do it, but so I thought I'd make this thing, and it had to be very, very realistic, because like when you look at a really good bonsai, it's like you feel yourself shrinking. It's like it really draws you in, and so I wanted it to be like that, where you stop thinking that you're looking at something smaller, and you start to change in it. So it's silicone, which is fun because you can plug the hair in it. And I found if I pull out one of my hairs and I cut it in half, it's the right scale, stuff like that. I bought a gun through the mail, a pellet gun, and yeah, that hurt. Stupid thing to do. So also don't do that. And so this this piece is like, I'm going to go through this one fast. It's like, you know, when you're thinking about stuff, it's, at least for me anyway, it's like I hear my own voice. Really annoying. Like if you're driving around, you're worried about something, or you're going through lists or something. I mean, your brain can make it sound like anything, like Donald Duck or Darth Vader or whatever. But it's usually your voice, at least for me. And I thought it feels like that's taking place inside my head. But since it's language, which is learned from a system that's outside of me, maybe it's like my voice. It sounds like it's inside, or it feels like it's inside, but it's actually outside of my being. So I was thinking about things like that, like where is thought located? And I don't think we're in here. I think we're outside of that somehow. But anyway, half of this is a cast of my head, and the other half is a cast of my head inverted in rubber to make up one thing. And so the ear came out quite abstract, like a little being or something. The best part about this piece is it got destroyed at the Dallas Art Fair. At one point, the air conditioning unit in the entire place went out, and it was hot and humid, really humid, and people came back from lunch, and my dealer called me and said, "Did you fill this full of water?" And I said, "No, I didn't." "Well, it's filled with water." So it had collected all the moisture that was in the air because it was made out of salt, and it was filled with water. I think it was really cool. Nobody wants to buy that. I don't know if I have to mention that part, but so I guess the point is it like had its real life after it was released from my control. And then I started doing some of these drawings. There's a program called what's it called? I usually use Blender, but this one was it's like free automotive use. Rhino. It's a difficult program for me. I'm not so great on the computer. And so if you feed an image in, so this was a Manet painting that I've entered into the program, and it sort of just reads it sort of coldly and blankly. Not like I do. Like if I look at a painting like that, it's like I'm in love with that painting. So it's like the different parts are registering in different ways, but the computer sees it, quite differently. So it sees it like a spaceship, I guess. At least that's how it looks to me. And these star bodies, these stars here are not just random. I hate things that are ambiguous, or just like there's no thought behind them. And so NASA's got this great program that you can dial in any date in history and from any place on the planet, and that's what the stars look like directly above. So when this was painted in a certain place at a certain time, I was able to put that in. And so this is what the stars look like if Manet had looked straight up. So that's what I was kind of doing with these. It's a Bruegel. This is another Manet painting, Dead Christ with Angels. And the next body of work with those drawings. By the way, these are, I use what's called soda blasting, which is it's basically sandblasting, but with baking soda. And on Yupo paper, I coat it with graphite and then remove material with the sandblaster. So it's not even any touching on the surface of the drawing. It's real fun. So these to me look like sets like science fiction sets, like lighting on sets, which is really interesting to me. They're trying to make it real, but it's obviously a false reality. But that's how we know reality in some ways. Like, it bugs me when like you're going through school and they show you a picture of the Milky Way, but they can't get that picture. It's a picture of a different Milky Way, but nobody ever mentions that. So I don't know, that kind of stuff bugs me. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? The spiral arm and all that stuff. And everybody says, we're here. So he says, well, anyway, whatever. But that freaks me out. I'm just going to skip through this one because that's too long of a story. Hey. This is a Bernini. It's funny to me that people have sort of looked at this and talked about this in lecture halls like forever, and it's very sexual and stuff like that, but it's not really addressed. But what's interesting to me is like I was talking to someone about this yesterday. The part that was paid for is like very kind of stiff and a little bit heavy or something. But then he said like I'm gonna do this part, and it's like a different artist worked on both those parts. So I thought I'd like to do something like that. So this is my leg, and so I actually put a bruise in my leg. I didn't know you could do that, but like I held it really hard and tried to cast that part to make this thing. It's got this, with a balloon, I made this back end out of it. So the challenge for me on this one, this is graphite, is to paint the reflection in my studio on the surface, which is nice as a concept, but unless you get it right, it's stupid, because as you get close, you can see one's painted and one's not. So I had to make it so that at zero distance, you couldn't tell the difference between the two. And I think I did it, because one of these is a reflection, and one of them is a painting of a reflection, and they're pretty close, I think. And what's funny about this piece, too, is if you walk toward the sculpture, one of them's moving a little bit, and one of them's not, so it makes you feel seasick, which is something I didn't expect at all, but it's kind of alive that way. And this is based on, what's that guy's name? What's this guy's name? Painters? Do you guys know this artist? No. Starts with an R. Anyway, Lamb of God is the sculpture, and so I thought I'd make one. This is salt and super glue as well. It's the size of that painting, which I can't believe I can't remember his name. Anyway, it's called Pansy, and which is a French word for thought, but it's also pansy. And so here's a pansy right here. So it's the same sort of thing. The cloth is carved, there's a hole in it up here, and and so the color in the lamb is hollow, is dried flowers, and so I just rubbed it. It's really dumb. I just rubbed it on the inside, and it because of the radiant quality of the salt, it made it quite fleshy underneath. Yeah, he's just stamen from the flowers. I think that's the part that is. Oh, maybe it's the pistil. I don't know. But all of it's just super glue and salt. And then I thought I want to make this hole here, and the first thing that came to my mind is this heart shape, and I thought I cannot do that. That's like so corny. It's like a Hallmark card or something like that. But a week later, I was like, I can't do that. So I kind of knew that like if I was that averse to it, then it was going to have to be the thing. So so the heart worked out, okay. And then on the bottom, this tube goes down. It's all made out of salt. And when it's lit right, it casts the salt on top of the, it's kind of ridiculous. It casts a salt heart shape on top of the pedestal. Another little painting. I'm not sure what to say about that. Yeah. That's my face. Painted in plastic from underneath so I could peel it off like skin and apply it. Remind me of this. And so nobody ever knows what I'm talking about, but they don't know what I'm talking about at all when I'm talking about this one for some reason. But so this is a toadstool, and I wanted to make something that was the color negative if you could have a photograph of something real, but in sculptural form. And I thought, okay, that's probably impossible, but I wanted to try it anyway. And so I think I got it pretty good. It had to be lit with a mirror so that there was no shadows on the bottom side. They'd be in reverse and stuff. So anyway, does that make sense to you guys? Okay. This is a lead. This is made out of lead. It's kind of heavy, so I built it. When it was done, I let it drop this thing, so it squished the thing. This one, the hurricane did get to. That's the picture they sent me from the gallery. I think it looks better. It's like it's from the ship of the deck of the Titanic or something. some more painting stuff. This is a great big painting about based in well, it's based in this one, which I can't even look at anymore because you can see it on like coffee cups and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to get around. So I basically rebuilt the space in Blender, which is a modeling program. So the painted form determined the shapes of the landscape here. It's a really cool thing. It's like you can build the entire universe in something like Blender, and it's really user-friendly, and it's free, so you can download it. So this is going to be my newest body of work, almost done. And all these take place in like well-known gallery spaces. That's the backgrounds. And then the objects, I guess, like this central object is like a painting turned into a sculpture through the program. So it's this painting, which I love a lot, which I think was made by aliens, because it's like every bit of it looks like from a different person. Like someone described, this is what Northern European looks like, and then someone else said, make it Italian. And so they finally got together, and it's such a cool painting. But they didn't know who did it for a long, long time, and then they attached it to a particular painter. But I look at that person's other work, and I think, I don't think so. It's like too strange. And then this is my studio, so I just took a picture of it and then let the computer pick up what it wants to. So those are the images in the background. Like there's that packing blanket and stuff like that. So these are quite rendered out, but they look pretty abstract when it's pushed over that other object. Oh, so that central object is that Christ painting, but turned in space and draped over some. It's like you can put an image on cloth and let like Newtonian physics, kind of like let it fall over other forms. That's kind of what I'm up to now. So there's another piece where it's like this part's painted, this is my studio, and this other reflection, well, that's my studio too. So that's painted, but this is the actual space that it's in now, which is Miles McHenry, my gallery in New York. And same deal with these. Max Hetzler, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Gallery in Germany. It's shows some really great painters that I really like in there. So it's like I'm sort of putting my own paintings that have been converted into sculptures into these well-known spaces. So what I do, this is important, what I do is I'll have an image that's been mediated like 1,000,000 times, or it's just part of their, if you take a picture of a space, you get to learn which shows off the space best. And so all galleries do this. So basically you see show after, or exhibition after exhibition, and it's all taken from the same perspective. So I take that, and then I build architecturally inside the computer the entire space. So if there's reflective objects that I build as part of the sculptural form, they reflect the architecture or whatever's inside that space. Does that make sense? I can't even tell what I'm saying. But anyway, the object's reflecting the space around it. So it's reflecting the space behind the observer, which is me, into the object too. And this one's not quite as blue as this, but anyway. Beverly, that one looks big that way. So this is Tanya Benakdar's space, and she says, Heim Steinbeck, one of my favorite artists. That's like one of these guys here. And then this is a Spanish painting, the still life. I can't think of that guy's name, but it's really a compelling little painting because it's built on, it's like displayed on this structure that's very rigid. And that Tanya Benakdar space in New York is like a weird bunker kind of situation. So it seemed to go together very well. This is a big painting based on a Velázquez painting. So I guess I'd say that, like, I know that there are things called paintings and things called sculpture, but it's about the person that's interpreting them, or I don't know. They're the same thing. For me, it's the same thing, exactly. It's just like a different medium. That's all. And I think that's all there is. Yep, that's all.